Welcome back to Revenge TAMARA, where emotions run deep, stories unfold with intensity, and every twist leaves you wanting more. Explore the power of courage, justice, and redemption through dramatic storytelling and unforgettable characters. Whether it's thrilling, emotional storylines or deep reflections on life's biggest betrayals and victories, I'll take you on an unforgettable journey of sweet satisfaction where truths are revealed. And as always, thank you for being a part of this. There is a particular kind of clarity that arrives when someone is trying to erase you. It is cold, and it is total, and it is the most focused I have been in 20 years. My name is TAMARA. I am 72 years old. I have an engineering degree from Ohio State, 31 years with the same firm, a house I built the back porch of with my own 2 hands, and until approximately 14 months ago, the uncomplicated love of my son Marcus. I say uncomplicated. I mean the kind of love you don't examine because you've never had reason to. That is, I have come to understand its own kind of blindness. I should tell you about Marcus before I tell you what Marcus did. Because this story, like every story that matters, is not about the thing that happened. It is about the person who chose to make it happen. Marcus is 45 years old. He is my oldest, my only son, built like me from the shoulders up and like his father from the eyes down. He has Lawrence's patience when he wants something and my stubbornness when he doesn't. He is successful, genuinely so. His own financial planning firm, a house in Westchester with a heated driveway, a wife named Sandra who I have always liked more than he probably deserved. 2 kids, Brendan and Cora, who I see every other Sunday. Or I did. Until Marcus started suggesting that maybe the drive was too much for me. Here is how it begins. I want you to understand this because the beginning of a thing like this is never dramatic. It is always quiet. It is always reasonable. It starts, in my case, with a phone call in November. Marcus calling to check in. How are you feeling, Mom? Did you take your blood pressure medication? You mentioned at Thanksgiving you'd been forgetting things. I had not mentioned anything at Thanksgiving. I had been completely fine at Thanksgiving. But I said yes, sometimes I forget things because I am 72 years old and sometimes I forget things and that is not a pathology, it is a Tuesday. That was the door I left open. Marcus walked through it and kept going. By January he was calling Sandra's mother to mention that he was worried. By February he had spoken to my doctor who I have seen for 11 years, without telling me to ask about, and I am quoting a letter I later obtained, early indicators of cognitive decline. By March he had started a group text with my daughter Patrice and my son-in-law Howie. The name of the group text was, and I am not making this up, Mom situation. I know because Patrice told me. Patrice is 50, sharp, lives in Columbus, and has never in her life been able to hold a secret for longer than it takes to park a car. She called me on a Thursday night in March sounding guilty before she said a word. Mom, she said, I need to tell you something Marcus doesn't know I'm telling you. And she did. The group text. The doctor call. A conversation Marcus had with their cousin Dale at Christmas in which he described me as, quote, not quite right anymore. I sat with that for a long time. Not quite right anymore. I want to tell you what I felt in that moment. It was not anger. Anger is clean. Anger knows what it wants. What I felt was something colder. The particular hollowness of looking at a version of your child and understanding that somewhere between who they were and who they became, a line was crossed that you cannot identify and cannot take back. I sat in my kitchen, in the chair Lawrence used to sit in when he drank his morning coffee, and I was quiet for a very long time. Then I called my attorney. Her name is Carol Merritt. She is 63 years old, has been practicing estate law for 35 years, and has the specific energy of a woman who has seen every variety of family betrayal and has long since stopped being surprised by any of it. I told her everything Patrice told me. There was a pause. Then Carol said, Tamara, before we do anything, I need to know one thing. How much access does Marcus have to your finances? The answer was, more than I had realized. I had added him as an authorized user on 2 accounts after Lawrence died. In that foggy year when I couldn't think clearly and Marcus was there every weekend and it seemed like the sensible thing to do. I had not revisited that decision in 4 years. I should have revisited that decision. Carol said to me, gently but without decoration, "Tamara, we need to find out what he's been doing with that access." Said, "I know." She said, "We need to do it quietly." Said, "I know that too." Here is the decision I made on a cold March evening in my kitchen. I decided not to confront Marcus. Not yet. I decided to do something that, in retrospect, was either the wisest thing I have ever done or the strangest. Possibly both. I decided to let him continue to believe what he believed. Not to perform confusion. Not to manufacture symptoms. Simply to stop correcting the narrative. To be, in every family interaction, exactly what Marcus had already decided I was. Agreeable. Little slower. Little quieter. A little less present than I actually was. What I was actually doing every single day for 6 months was paying very close attention. If you've made it this far, do us one quick favor. Please subscribe and like so you never miss a story. New episode every day. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing and means everything to us. Thank you genuinely. Here is what 6 months of paying close attention looks like. It looks like Carol quietly pulling every transaction from those 2 accounts going back 18 months. It looks like $4,300 moved in amounts small enough to avoid automatic flags. 200 here, 350 there. Once a clean 1,000 labeled home repair reimbursement for a repair that was never made. It looks like a conversation which I know about because Carol's colleague handled it, in which Marcus contacted an estate attorney. Not Carol, a different firm, to ask about the process for establishing power of attorney over a parent who was, quote, beginning to show signs of diminished capacity. Diminished capacity. It looks like Marcus, in early May, setting a document in front of me at the kitchen table and describing it as just updating some account information. I said pleasantly that I wasn't sure I followed it and could he explain it again later. He said of course no rush. He was patient with me. He was very patient with me. That patience, I have since had time to consider, is the most painful part of the whole thing. The patience of a man who believes the outcome is already decided. What he did not know was that I had photographed the document on my phone before he put it away. Carol, when I sent it to her, said only, "Tamara, do not sign anything." I said, "I know, Carol." She said, "I want to be clear. This document would have given him significant control over your primary assets." I said, "I know that too." There was a pause. Then she said something I will not forget. She said, "You know, most people in your position would have confronted him in April." I said, "Most people in my position didn't have 6 months of documentation yet." She laughed. A short laugh, but a real one. The family meeting was Marcus's idea. He called it for a Saturday in September, at his house in Westchester, framing it to Patrice and Howie as a chance to get everyone together and talk about some things regarding Mom's future. Patrice called me immediately. I told her I'd be there. She said, "Mom, do you know what this is about?" I told her I had a pretty good idea. She went quiet. Then, "Are you okay?" I told her I was better than okay. I told her to trust me and to be in the room when it started. I drove the 40 minutes to Westchester on a Saturday morning in September when the light was doing what September light does. Thin and gold and trying to make everything look more resolved than it is. I had my folder on the passenger seat. I had Carol on speed dial. I had slept, for the first time in 6 months, without difficulty. Sandra opened the door. She looked at me with an expression I recognized as genuine concern, the kind that doesn't know yet it's been used as cover for something else. "Tamara," she said, "we're so glad you came." I told her she had a beautiful home. Meant it. Marcus was in the living room. Patrice and Howie on the sofa. Marcus stood when I came in, and his expression was the one I had been watching for 6 months. Attentive, careful, the face of a man managing a situation. "Mom," he said, "you look good." I told him I felt good. I sat down in the armchair across from him, placed my folder on my knee, and folded my hands on top of it. So I said pleasantly, "What did you want to talk about?" What followed was 15 minutes of the most carefully constructed concern I have ever sat through. Marcus talked about noticing changes, about worrying, about wanting to make sure I was protected. Sandra nodded at the right moments. Howie stared at the carpet. Patrice sat very still beside me. Marcus talked about the accounts, about oversight, about a document he had prepared. He slid it across the coffee table toward me. I looked at it. I looked at him. I opened my folder. Marcus, I said, I want to ask you something. He said, of course, Mom. I said, in the last 18 months, how much money would you say you've moved from my accounts? The room went completely quiet. Marcus's expression did something I had not seen on his face since he was a teenager caught in something he could not explain. Not quite guilt. Not quite fear. The specific look of a person realizing, all at once, how long someone else has been watching. He started. $4,300, I said. In 31 separate transactions. Carol has the records. All of them. Sandra made a sound I cannot describe. Howie's head came up from the carpet. I also have, I continued, the letter from the attorney you contacted in April. The document you asked me to sign in May, which I photographed before you put it away. And a recording, entirely legal in New York, I checked, of a conversation in which you described me to your cousin Dale as not quite right anymore. Marcus said nothing. He had the look of a man standing in a room he spent a long time building, watching the walls come down floor by floor. I want to be clear about something, I said, and I kept my voice even because this was not the moment for anger. This was the moment for clarity. I am not diminished. I am not confused. I am not in need of management. Pause. What I am is your mother. And I have been your mother for 45 years, through things that would have broken a lesser woman. And I will be your mother long after this room stops being uncomfortable. Marcus's jaw was working. His eyes were wet. I did not look away. I don't know where the worry ended and the other thing began, I said, more quietly. I think you may not know either. And I think that is the most honest thing I can say about it. Sandra had her hand over her mouth. Patrice was crying without making a sound, the way she has done since she was 7 years old. I stood up, picked up my folder. I'm not going to pursue the legal options Carol has outlined. I let that land. Not because they aren't available to me. 'Cause you are my son. Because your father would not have wanted me to. And because I choose to believe that the man who moved that money is not who you actually are. I looked at him directly. But the account access is gone. The document is destroyed. And if any version of this happens again, stop. Don't. I drove home in the September light. I thought about Lawrence the whole way. The way I always do when something has been hard and is finally over. I thought about what he would have said, something sharp and warm at the same time, the way he always put things. I thought about 45 years of being someone's mother and how it doesn't make you immune to being hurt by them, but it does give you a very long context in which to hold the hurt. Pulled into my driveway. Went inside. Put on the Coltrane record Lawrence bought me for our 20th anniversary. Marcus called that evening. He didn't have a speech prepared. He just said, Mom. Said, I know, son. We stayed on the line for a while without talking. That was enough. That was, I think, actually everything. Brendan and Cora came for Sunday dinner 3 weeks later. Cora asked me to teach her chess. I am teaching her. She is, I'll be honest, already better than she should be at 7 years old. No doubt she got it from me.